This episode of Brains on Games is about a tile-laying game with pandas. Welcome to Brains on Games. I'm Dr. Brian McDonald, and this episode we are going to talk about a tile-laying game. A really straightforward, simple tile-laying game with a forest and bamboo and pandas and frogs and butterflies. This is a game that was sent to me last week by the folks over at Indie Boards and Cards. So it was like Christmas in December at Brains on Games. It's a game called Kodama Forest. Now this is a game that you can play with it says on the box between 3 and 6 players, but there are rules for 1 and 2 players. So there's a solitaire version and a game you can play with just 2. You can either play it cooperatively or competitively at 2 players. You can play it in about half an hour. And also the box says age 14 and up, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I think 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds can play this game without too much trouble, partly because it's semi-cooperative and partly because it's a really straightforward, simple game. So I think this is great for the younger kids, not just for the teenagers. Let's take a look at Kodama Forest. Now you saw the box art when I held it up earlier. This is a great looking game for sure. The artwork's fantastic. I've punched all of the pieces and packed them back in the box, and everything still fits in here flat if you're interested to see that. Some folks like to know how things pack up again once you're done playing. When you crack open the box, you're going to see the rule books and the player boards. And what I like about this game, okay, this is a super light game. This is not a complex strategy game where you're going to be sitting and thinking for several minutes about each turn. You do have player boards here that are advanced on one side, and they have beginner boards on the other side. These are quite a bit easier than the advanced boards. Beneath the player boards, you've got a bag with the forest tiles, and underneath those, you've got your pandas and frogs and butterflies. How do you win a game of Kodama Forest? Well, the player boards, you can see they have the numbers 5 and 10 all over them. You're going to be playing these forest tiles onto your board. Some of them have flowers or ponds or bamboo groves, but what you're trying to do is cover up the 10s and the 5s so that the player with the lowest total at the end is going to be the one who wins. It is a game that is semi-cooperative, but it's also competitive because the way that those player boards are placed is I'm going to have one in between myself and the player on my right, another one in between myself and the player on the left. So it goes around in a circle like that, and you're sharing those boards on either side. Each player is going to count up the total points across both of those boards in order to determine who has the lowest score. So if I'm covering up things on my board, I'm not only helping myself to get those lower points, I'm also helping the player beside me. Every turn, players are going to have 3 of these tiles to put somewhere on the board and cover up as many of those points as possible, and they are double-sided, so you can do that either way. And another bonus that you might get is if you manage to make a half flower into a whole flower, you attract a butterfly onto your board. So you sort of it's like getting an extra turn. If you build a whole pond, you get to attract a frog. If you build the bamboo grove, my favorite, you get a panda. Who doesn't like pandas? And these are, look, I'm going to say right off, not only is the box art great, I do like the artwork on the components, and you get those sleepy pandas, and I know my nieces in particular, one of them really loves pandas, so having a game with pandas is always a bonus for us. And you just keep playing back and forth. You've got 3 tiles, you play one on one side, one on the other, and you're trying to cover up those 5s and 10s. As you go through the game, your board is going to start to fill up with these forest tiles, and you'll add some frogs, and hopefully you'll get to add some pandas. And it's, like I said, this is just simple tile laying. Because the tiles are double-sided, you can rotate them in all different ways, which sort of adds to the spatial complexity maybe, but there's other than trying to get these animals into your forest so that you're covering up some extra spaces on your turn, there's nothing too complex about the scoring or the tile laying here. The interesting part about this game is that semi-cooperative nature, I think. This is something that you don't see in every single game, tile laying or otherwise, because I'm helping myself by covering up those numbers. I'm also helping the player beside me. So I might be looking on my right and filling this up, but seeing on the right of the player beside me, looking at his other board to see, oh, is he covering up lots of things on that board too? Maybe I want to start concentrating more on getting extra points on the board on my left. You're trying to balance between lowering your points and lowering the points of your opponents, because you do, at the end of the game, want to be the one who has the lowest total across those two boards. And that's a real push-pull that I like. What skills are you using here? Well, clearly, this is a visual spatial game. You're using those mental rotation skills and you're physically manipulating those puzzle pieces in order to cover up as much space as possible and hopefully build some ponds and bamboo groves for your forest. The other thing that you're doing, though, with that semi-cooperative mechanism is that balance is one that requires players to have two opposing ideas or strategies in their mind at the same time. And I love games that do that, because you're thinking, I want to minimize my points, but I don't want to minimize my opponent's points too much, so I have to be very careful about how quickly I cover up my board in case I'm giving some other players some bonus. Developmentally, the ability to entertain two opposing ideas at the same time, to kind of have two sides of an argument, to be able to have second thoughts about a choice that you're about to make, that is something that only develops for kids in elementary school. And it develops early in elementary school, and then it gets harder again as kids go into high school, because teenagers have bigger emotions about things, and that can make it harder to have second thoughts about your first reaction. And so I do like games that offer opportunities to practice and think about and talk about that skill. The ability to say, I want to do this, but I have to be careful. And I do think that that's a great mechanism to practice. Final thoughts about Kodama Forest. Well, first of all, I want to thank Indie Boards and Cards for sending this game my way. It is a game that has artwork that, for me, is really appealing. I think partly because my niece loved pandas so much. She used to have a ball cap that said panda on the top because she likes pandas. You've got these little sleepy pandas with the spirals on their stomachs. And so I do like the art style of the animals, and the forest theme is fun. It's also a game that's super easy to set up and tear down. It's another one like Land vs. Sea, where it takes under a minute to get things ready to go. It's also easy to teach and easy for kids to learn, which is very important. You know, they can play this. My kids, when they were younger, could have played this independently. They wouldn't even need my supervision or for me to really remind them very much of the rules. It's got that semi-cooperative element. So it's a game that works with younger kids, but with the semi-co-op skill that you're practicing, that idea of second-guessing yourself or having two opposing ideas or strategies in your mind both at the same time is a great skill to practice, especially for the younger kids. So this is one I would pull out for a younger audience for sure. I would probably talk about that fact that, you're trying to get your lower score, but at the same time, you don't want to lower your opponent's score too much. I think that those are great things for kids to try out. And it's got solo rules, so the first time I opened the box, I played it as a puzzle. And of course, because I like that forest theme and the artwork, these are fun puzzle pieces to play with. If you have any comments or questions or suggestions about the show or about Kodama Forest in particular, you can leave them in the comments section below this video, or you can email me at brian@brainsongames.ca. brainsongames.ca is the website. That's where future episodes will go, and the previous ones are up there already. Brains on Games is the Twitter handle and the Facebook page and the Instagram feed, so we're all over the place. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to be notified of future ones, you can head on over to YouTube and click that subscribe button. Thanks for joining me. Hopefully I'll see you next time.